What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is Growing Upstairs podcast with your host, Holden and
Noah.
Man, it's awesome to be back here.
We're back, man.
We're back. And we can now say, hey, make sure you go back and listen or whatever on this, because we're in episode 2. We're going to keep this thing rocking and rolling.
We have officially become more than one-hit wonders.
That's right. A few people are listening. And speaking of that, shameless plug right here, we are now on Instagram as well.
That's right.
Noah is I'm putting Noah in charge of Instagram, and he is the one who's running things. So if you see something up there and you're like, well, why didn't they talk about me? Noah did it, not me.
That's right. You can blame me.
So make sure you guys go over to Instagram and follow us there. Where are we following us?
So we're on Instagram at GrowingUpstairs. So all just in one word, at GrowingUpstairs.
Oh, simple enough. Well, hey, we're in the Upstairs podcast studio is what I'm going to call it, because we are in the upstairs recording. You won't hear old Riley man in the background hollering, saying, hey, let me out of the cage. You know, you're not going to hear that in this. You may hear a little bit of echo or something, or a kid may come in from youth here in a minute. But we're in the Upstairs podcast studio is what we're going to call it from now on. So the purpose of this show, as we talked about in the first episode, is growing with God together. We're going to talk about Jesus, life, music, and much more fun stuff as we kind of get into the show. But Noah, what's been going on in your life over the past week since the last time we talked?
Man, just continuing to work at the bank. So just working and taking care of Riley. You know, you mentioned Riley. So taking care of him, man, he's been growing still. And
is he growing upstairs?
He's not quite growing upstairs yet. I haven't taught him how to walk upstairs. Actually, at my house, I have a stoop that's off the back porch.
Yeah.
And instead of walking up the stairs, he chooses to jump all the way up the stoop. So he does not quite understand what it means to grow upstairs yet.
That's right. He's not going upstairs.
But he's
gliding upstairs.
That's right. But he's doing good. Life's been good for the past week. So time in the Word's been really nice. Walking through Proverbs, and it's just been going good.
It's such a good thing. Since the last time we talked, you know, we made it a point, and we're trying to make it more of a point of our lives, and it's further in God's kingdom, is getting in the Word more, being more knowledgeable of the Word for ourselves. It's not for us, though. It's for us to be able to share with others like we're doing on this show.
That's right.
And as well as, like, when we get to youth, we had an awesome panel night tonight. I think it was awesome anyways. We talked about music for 45 minutes of the hour that we had, but it was still such a good time. So for me, the last week, dude, it's just been hot, so hot. I work outside, as we talked about it last time. I like the heat to an extent. I'm tired of it, dude. I'm ready for it to be gone. But it's hard to believe that we're about to reach the time where school's about to get back in. For some people, school has already started. School's already getting back. And what is something that some people can do, especially like youth kids that are listening? What are some things that they can do in the busy times that we're about to get in? How can we keep God first?
Man, I think we talked about it tonight a little bit with youth discussion, but I think one huge thing as you go back to school, as we continue at work, but really for those listening who are about to start back with school, whether it be going into high school, making that transition into college, man, find some Christian community. We talked about it a little bit tonight, but it's so important. It's so tough when you get into those conversations, when you get into situations where you're not surrounded by Christian community. It's so easy to allow the enemy to just trap you up in that situation, and you just begin to stumble. And having that Christian community that you can run back to, that you're comfortable with, that you're willing to sit down with and have real vulnerable conversations, it's tough to do, but it's so rewarding. I think the Lord can really use that to impact your life.
Yeah, I think it's been such a blessing to me that how God's worked in my life over the past few years, but really over the last year, how much He's impacted my life, trying to, starting and helping with the youth and becoming a leader with the youth, but also the community that I've built here. You and I think, have gotten closer over the time between playing music together, between now doing this show, but also like you and I talk about not just life and what's going on with baseball, what's going on with Riley, what's going on with the Braves. We're not talking about just that. We're talking about God too.
Right.
You'll send me a Bible verse. You'll send me what you're reading, and that helps. That's something when we talk about community that people don't think about, is when you have that community, and yes, we're talking about fun things, but when we start talking about the Word, it helps to keep each other engaged. Not necessarily as a I'm telling you, hey, you need to go read your Bible. You need to go do this. No. It was, you send me some stuff that you're going through, and a lot of times I've related or you've related to what we're going through or what we're reading in that time or in that moment. And one other thing, and we'll kind of get into the first topic of the day, coming back to school, and we talked about this tonight at a pretty good pace too, is prayer, is praying.
Yeah.
And we shared a little bit about it tonight, but one kind of a funny story, to me anyway, it was more terrifying at the time. But in my time in youth, one of the big things that I wanted to know, and I asked our youth minister, was, hey, I want to be able to pray good. I want to be a good prayer warrior. I want to be able to pray, where these guys, when they stand up and they pray in front of the church, it's like, man, that was a prayer. You get done with it, and it's like, yeah, instead of me sitting here going, well, Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for getting us here. Amen. Something small and simple. Right. And I know it starts small and simple, but I think prayer is such a big thing. And when I was in youth, I told my minister that, and we were sitting in church like on a Sunday, and he's at the pulpit, and I'm like, this dude's about to call on me to pray in front of the entire church. And you get that anxiety building up in your chest where you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do this, but you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
To where it's like, you have to. And sure enough, he called on me, and I prayed. And just Grace had shared this earlier. For those that don't know, Grace is one of the leaders here at the Upstairs in the youth group. She had shared how God just kind of puts the words in your mouth sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. I mean, I was terrified, but afterwards I was like, it's a start.
Yeah.
I'm doing it now. And from that point on, you just learn more and more prayer. You try not to pray the same prayer. I think there is something said about if you're saying the same exact thing every time you pray, that you got to kind of change it up a little bit. You can't just say, Lord, thank you for this food and all the many blessings. Amen. Every time you eat. But I think most of the time we kind of get in that monotone state of that's what we do. So I think that's another big thing is coming into school is praying. And when you say you're going to pray for somebody, take the time, pray for them, whether it's in that moment, later, whatever it is, but pray. Even if your prayers aren't answered, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. God wants to hear from you. He wants that relationship with you. That's another thing that we talked about a little bit last night. But do you have anything as far as the topic of prayer goes, even if it's stuff we talked about earlier?
Not really. I mean, I think you really kind of hit it on the head. But I think we did have a great conversation tonight. And I would just kind of encourage along the lines of what you were saying with how Grace put it is everywhere you go, you can pray. And I even mentioned tonight during that conversation, we need to just practice praying, even if it's at Walmart or even if it's walking your dog or something. Like, one thing that I found is when I'm walking Riley and out in nature and it's beautiful weather outside, it's so refreshing to use that time to talk to the Lord and really just, thank Him for different things that have been going on, or even ask and pray and ponder on why different things may be happening in life. So just finding that time where you stop and you do just reflect on the things that the Lord does for you in your life through prayer. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing, especially going back to school, because it's like, hey, you don't have to just pray, hey, God, let this be a good school year. But, pray for your friends. Pray for, wanting to grow your community, like you said, and finding community at your school, but also inviting them to church or to youth group on Wednesday nights and stuff like that. Just praying fervently all day, you know. And it doesn't mean that you have to have your eyes closed walking through the hallway and run into a locker. That's not what I'm saying. But you can pray, just like you said, anywhere, anytime, all day, every day.
That's so good, man. I think one thing that people miss, whether it be middle school, high school, college, work, that area that you're in day by day is a mission field. Like, I think we get caught up in, oh, I've got this test coming up, or, oh, my manager's coming in today, or, oh, I want to hang out with my friends. But it's like you just said, pray for your friends, pray for what might be going on in your school. Like, at that time in your life, that is your mission field in a way. And we had a good conversation tonight about how do you ask your friends or communicate to your friends about coming to church with you. And that's one thing too, is it can be something as simple as just building that relationship with them and letting them be a part of what you do. Like, if you go to church on Wednesday night with your friends and you won't another person to come to church with you, step out of your comfort zone in a way.
Ask them.
And build a relationship with them that shows them, hey, they want me to be a part of what they're doing. And I think that's a good tactic to use when it comes to inviting people or, getting on that level with people at work, school, wherever you may be.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing. It's not only you getting out of your comfort zone and asking somebody, but for them, it is a huge deal. Some people that have either never been to church, never been to a youth group, or some that have maybe had a bad experience or something like that. It takes a lot for them to get out of their comfort zone and do it as well. A quote that I'd read yesterday, and I told you about it earlier, was, so many people go all around the world trying to find the answers to everything that there is, and they could have taken the shortest trip there was from standing to kneeling and just pray to God about it.
Come on.
Give it to God. Come on. Well, let's get to the funny segment of the day. We've got the Youth Group Chronicles segment, which, again, if you guys haven't heard of Youth Group Chronicles, this is going to be about the last time that I'll say it. They do funny and embarrassing stories from their youth time. Noah actually reached out to or put a story up there on YouTube, or I got it all mixed up, Instagram, trying to get some.
One of those social media platforms.
There you go. Trying to get some feedback from some others, and I think we finally did. We've got a little bit of feedback, so we're going to let Noah take it away with the Youth Group Chronicles segment.
All right.
About either funny, embarrassing, awesome, amazing stories from their time in youth.
So we got a few funny things this week. Definitely enjoyed reading through what people had to share and what people had to say. One of the first ones, though, was more of a serious one. We had one of our youth reach out and say he enjoyed hearing different people's testimonies when we were at Fuge. So we mentioned it in the last podcast, but we did take a trip to Jackson, Tennessee for Fuge camps a couple weeks ago, and we had a moment with our church group time where people were just sharing their testimonies. And so one of our youth said that he really enjoyed that. That was one of his favorite memories.
And you can shout anybody out if they wanted. They might not want to shout out to it, and that's okay. No big deal.
Right. Another one talked about former youth Walt. They mentioned Walt was hiding in the attic of the church and that they could not find him. So, and if you knowing Walt, it makes it a little bit funnier.
Oh, yeah.
Just as, his joking full personality. But I can just picture him hiding in the attic and people playing hide and seek, just looking for him.
I love Walt too. And it seems so much like him. It also seems like somebody probably said, hey, here's the parameters. This is where you stay. And Walt's like, well, nobody said I couldn't get in the attic. And he's like, I'm going up there.
We also had somebody mention playing Ninja every day at the Fuge fountain.
Oh, okay.
So when we were at Fuge, there was a big fountain in the middle of the campus that we were at. And they would gather there before worship, and they would all break out in a huge game of Ninja, where you back up and play Ninja. And they got pretty heated. They
competitive
were,
people.
Yeah, very competitive man. Ninja. So I would say that's a fun memory.
Competitive ninja. I never thought I'd hear it that way.
They had a good time with that, so that's a good memory. And then another one, a lot of them were from Fuge, just recent memories.
There's nothing wrong with that, though.
But this one was playing the ABCD game and the imaginary color-changing fish game.
Never in my life heard of this, so hit me with it.
The imaginary color fish game, I still do not understand the rules of that game. You might have to ask one of the other youth or leaders to explain it to you better than I can.
Is this Googleable?
I doubt it. I'm pretty sure this was probably something that they came up with on the spot.
This is a Fuge original.
But pretty much what you do is you say, what color is your fish? And Holden, you would say,
blue.
No, it's not. It's green.
Okay.
So that's the game. And you have to figure out how the color of your fish matches up with what the other person has in their head somehow. See, I'm telling you, I don't quite really know how to explain it. It's very confusing.
Well, whoever sent that to you, they need to come and explain it to us as well.
Right, I agree. So finally, when we were at Fuge, I got to the point where they would ask me what color my fish was, and I would say blue. And they'd say, no, it's not, it's green. And I'd say, no, it's blue. I'm pretty sure it's blue. And so I didn't know.
Turquoise.
Right. So they really got on some people's nerves playing that game.
Yeah, I'm going to need some serious elaboration so I can figure out this game too.
But the other one, the ABCD game, I did finally understand this game, right? So this one would be, we're in the podcast studio here in the upstairs, and so all around us in the room, there are different objects like a table and chalkboard, that type of thing. So you would say A is the chalkboard, and then you say B is the table. And you'd say C is my hat. What is D?
The microphone.
And I would say, no, it's not.
So now I'm having to figure out what's in their mind again?
Yes.
Oh, man. I could see how this could probably get annoying pretty quick.
So you say, give me a couple things, A, B, C.
Okay, A is this bottled water right here.
Okay. B
is the chair.
Mm-hmm.
C is the door.
Mm-hmm.
What's D?
D is my Bible.
No. D
for
is not
for the
your
sake
Bible.
of the rules of the game, that would be correct.
Okay.
So, we'll let you guys ponder on that one for the week. We may reveal the answers.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
But for the sake of playing the game, in the spirit of the game, you have to figure out the rules.
Okay.
So listen, if you can't quite figure it out, listen back to the wordplay on that and see if you can't figure out the ABCD game. But that was a great memory. That was actually the last one we had, but that was a really good one for the sake of this question.
Yeah. I'm going to have to listen back pretty hard and see if I can't figure it out, because thinking about it right now, there's what was the game people used to play, was like Black Magic or something like that, where you say, okay, kind of a color game like that too. And whoever was saying it, like the last thing that they would say is, they would point at something black, for instance, like, hey, I'm talking about is it your hat? And you would say no. And the person knew, okay, that hat's black. So the next answer that you give is going to be correct. So for example, hey, this bottle is it your bottle of water? No. Is it, this piece of paper? No. Is it that hat? No. Is it this iPad? Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it goes like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like that, but that was one we used to play, and it used to get on people's nerves if they didn't know what was going on.
Brain games like that.
And I don't know what's going on. So we're gonna have to figure it out there. So thank you guys for reaching out on that. Every week we're gonna put that up for you guys to post, whether it's on a post on Instagram if you want to DM it, or I'm sure Noah will probably put a story up like that. Generally every week, so that way everybody can do it. So now we're gonna get to something I'm pretty fired up about.
We fixing to raise the meter to Aquafina. I need her. Yeah, we fixing to raise the
So we finna raise the meter right here.
All right.
And this is going to be our intro every week. I don't care if they tell us, hey, you can't play that, you don't own this music or anything like that. But we're about to raise the meter every week where we grow upstairs, where we're going to talk about this is where we grow together and whatever it is that we do. So we finna raise the meter.
That was
awesome. The way
awesome.
that I want to do it. And I hope it hypes you up, because it hyped me up thinking about it.
Yeah.
But this week, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about getting out of your comfort zone, which is such a big thing. We've already touched on it a little bit in prayer and asking friends and stuff like that when you go to school about getting out of your comfort zone. But I think it's such a big thing to get out of your comfort zone, whether it's worshiping, whether it's making new friends, whether it's, you can give me examples too of different ways of getting out of your comfort zone. So in your time, whether it's youth, leadership, or what have you, can you think of a couple of times where it's like, I had to get out of my comfort zone, and it's not easy. It's not always fun. It's uncomfortable. There's a reason it's called getting out of your comfort zone. But there are times when we follow Christ, it is such a big deal to get comfortable in the uncomfortable by getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. The first thing that pops in my head as soon as you asked that question was a mission trip that I took my freshman year of college to Miami, Florida. And I went with a couple people. I went with Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ at Georgia Southern. So shout out to Crew at Georgia Southern.
Shout out.
But man, it was great. And when I first got in the van to take that trip, I was nervous as all get out. I knew a handful of people that were going, but I did not know the majority of the people that were going. And we were going to be staying in Miami at a church, sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor, and going to the University of Miami, Florida International University, and doing some evangelism stuff on those campuses. And I had never really had much experience with evangelism, doing anything like that, and it took a lot for me to get out of my comfort zone. And I'll tell you, I think one thing that really helped was on the way down to Miami, as soon as we got there to the church that we were staying at for the mission trip, you could tell automatically that the people with us, they cared about you. They wanted to get to know you. They wanted to be involved. They wanted to teach you how to evangelize, get you a little more comfortable with it, and leaning on each other in that time, and also us leaning on one another and trusting in the Lord, we were able to go out and do evangelism. And then we would sit down with people on University of Miami's campus, and I mean, we would just be walking up to random people, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, it was the weirdest experience. But I almost, looking back on it, I think it was almost easier to walk up to these random people than it is sometimes to sit down with the people that we see every day and that are, you know, friends or whatnot that we may know.
That are already in our
Does
community.
that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, somebody that you don't know, I'm probably never going to ever see anybody that I met on that University of Miami campus again. But the people that we see in our everyday lives, that we're at school with, that we work with, that we do different things with, it's a lot tougher to get out of our comfort zone with those people. So it's an adjustment of how did I take that from Miami and transition it into my day-to-day walk with the people that I see, you know, now. So
it's such a hard thing. And I touched on this at D-Now weekend. This is something that you just kind of get those kind of pull at the hearts where it's like, hey, I think this is something you should share. And this was a big thing for me that I was told in youth. It's like, hey, you have to step out of your comfort zone occasionally. Mm-hmm. Like I talked about at the opening of this, where, you know, it's not always easy. It's not always fun. But we worry so much about what's Sally going to think, or what's John going to think, or what are these people going to think if I'm worshiping, I'm putting my hands in the air, or if I'm out trying to tell people, hey, come to church, come to youth night with us on Wednesday. Or if you're at work, like at the bank or something, and you see somebody and they're going through a hard time, because that's one thing, I mean, it's quoted all of the time, you know, be kind to people because you never know what somebody's going through.
Right.
But even at work, if you see, hey, somebody's going through a rough time, it's like, hey, you know, is there anything I can do to help you? You know, simple things like that, where it's getting out of your comfort zone, asking, hey, is there something I can do for you? Can I, even if it's just praying for somebody, you know, we talked about prayer off the top there. But when you have these fears of what's Sally and what's Johnny going to think, it doesn't matter what they think. It's not between them. It's between you and God. And one big thing as far as being courageous in this, when you're stepping out of your comfort zone, in Joshua 1:9, it says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And that's such a big, that to me is one of the, like a starburst of opening your mind to saying, I can't be afraid to get out of my comfort zone. It's literally in the Bible telling you, be strong, be courageous, get out of your comfort zone. Matthew 10:26, do not be afraid, for there is nothing concealed that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, this was such a big one to me, what I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim it from the roofs. Telling others about Jesus, spreading the gospel. And it takes getting out of your comfort zone. Like you say, you're walking around a university you've never been to, people that you've never met. You're building a community with the people that you're with, yes, but you're also trying to teach others about Christ and trying to grow the community of God as well. But it takes getting out of that comfort zone. You can't just sit at home and live. And we go back to last week. You can't just sit at home and live a Sunday morning faith and think that anything's going to happen in your life.
Dude, that's such a challenge.
It's hard, especially when you get into mundane things. For me, I see two people generally at work all day, every day. One of which goes to church with us. The other one, matter of fact, he's leaving. But it's hard even for me knowing, and like you said, you would think people that you know, it's like, oh yeah, I can get out of my comfort zone. No. We're not talking about cutting up, having fun, doing this. It's like when it comes down to talking about God, talking about Jesus, spreading his word, how hard that is with the people that you know. Because even the people that I know, I don't find myself all day, every day sitting there going, hey, let's talk about Jesus real quick.
Right.
And I've tried, and I try this daily, is trying to strengthen my walk with Christ. And it's hard. Sometimes you fall, but that's the thing about God. But God is he's right there to pick you up.
Right.
Somebody that's always holding on to you.
Yeah.
So one of the other, couple of the other verses, back to the strength side of things, Philippians 4:13, which is such a big one. I can do all things through Christ. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And this is going to lead into actually the youth verse, which I didn't realize this until y'all were talking about it, and it's on the back of this shirt right here. It's 1 Timothy 4:12 and 15 is what we're going to talk about. And this leads so much into youth. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example. Mm-hmm. And that's such a big thing for our youth. You have to get out of that comfort zone of talking to your friends, making a community, asking people to church, all of the above. Do you kind of have anything else that you think of or that you want to share as far as getting out of your comfort zone goes?
Well, one thing that I kind of wanted to do, I want to go back to Philippians 4:13.
Okay.
I think that's that's your football player, your Tim Tebow on the eye black verse, right? And so many times we talk about context, right? When we're reading scripture, when we're trying to understand it. And I think a lot of times this verse can be taken as I can throw the touchdown pass through Christ who gives me strength, or I can make an A on the test through Christ who gives me strength. But we have to look at the context of what's going on in Philippians when Paul is writing it, and the fact that Paul is saying, I can do all things through Christ who give me strength. Like he's saying, I can do the things that God and Jesus has asked of me, required of me to do because he gives me strength.
Yeah.
And that looks like sharing the gospel, stepping out of your comfort zone, inviting somebody to church, building a relationship with someone who might not look like you, who might not have the same background as you, and showing them the love of Christ. It's not like I can drive a Ferrari because Christ gives me strength.
Yeah.
It's like I can get out of my comfort zone and live the life that Jesus has asked of me to live, go and make disciples of all nations. I can do those things because he gives me the strength to do it.
Exactly. It's not my strength.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christ giving me strength.
Right. And that leads us perfectly into 1 Timothy 4:12, like you were saying, also written by Paul, speaking to Timothy, who was one of his disciples, right? Timothy was a younger pastor who Paul had helped lead and left the church of Ephesus to, right? So, and he's saying, don't let them look down on you because you're young, and live out in context and in conduct and in love and in speech, like live the things of Christ out to them, show them Christ. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. Live your walk with Christ and let it be shown, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah. Because then right after, when you get to verse 15, be diligent in these matters. Give yourself wholly to them so that everyone may see your progress. Mm-hmm. And again, it doesn't go back to you. It's not going back to your progress as far as, oh, look at what he's doing. No. Look at what God is doing through him.
Right.
He is growing with Christ. He is growing together with Christ, like we talk about in this. We're growing upstairs. You're going upstairs. You're growing up. Doesn't matter. We're growing up. Look at how God is working in his life and the progress that he's made in throughout it. And then kind of wrapping up on the comfort zone thing here, this is a verse that is read, I think, a lot of times at like at funerals and stuff, and when people die, not to get morbid with it, but it's Psalm 23:4. Even though I walk in the darkest valley or the shadow of the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. So even in death, the Lord comforts us. While we're alive and young, as we speak about in 1 Timothy, we have to get out of our comfort zone for Christ. And then in the return, when it's time to go meet Christ, he comforts us in that way when that time comes.
Yeah.
So I just want to challenge not only you, but everybody that's listening as well. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone as you walk throughout life, as you get ready to go back to school, as you're at work, and you just, whether it's praying, whether it's talking to somebody and saying, hey, I would love for you to come and visit our church, even at work. If you see somebody and you're like, hey, I feel led to ask you if you want to go to church, or if you just want to come visit, maybe check it out. Or you guys go into school, because everybody's getting back in school, asking somebody, hey, come check out our youth group. See if you like it. It's not for everybody, but at the same time, it's an outreach. We want to reach out to others. And again, it just takes getting out of your comfort zone to do that.
And I think Lori said it tonight. Don't let that 1 second impact somebody's eternal salvation. Like, it may be that you asking them to come to church with you, they hear the word, they hear the gospel, and their life is changed, and they meet Jesus that night, and begin to live their walk with them. So don't let that 1 second of being scared about what Sally or Johnny's going to think impact what God can do through just you asking somebody to church or really having a gospel conversation with them.
Yeah. And we talked about this tonight too, kind of wrapping up here, is what's the worst that can happen? They say no. Mm-hmm. But what if somebody next to them just so happened to hear you talking about it and it's like, and gets curious, and then they ask you about it, or all of a sudden they show up and you're like, like we talked about last week. What did you say that the preacher at Fuge said?
The gospel hits you on the way to somebody else.
There you go.
Yeah.
What if even in that no, it doesn't necessarily hit that person, but it hits somebody next to him?
Yeah.
Such a big thing. So right there,
We fixing to raise the meter.
we raised the meter a little bit there as we get into talking about some comfort zones. So
I love that sound.
I do too.
That is awesome.
I think it's fun kind of having it in there. So kind of in closing here, I just had a couple of quotes that I saw that I wanted to read real quick. These aren't Bible verses, but it's just a couple of quotes that I was like, dude, this is nuts. And it's grab hold of Jesus, because he's the one thing that won't let you loose. Won't let you loose. So next week, make sure you guys tune in again next week. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and all that good stuff.
Yeah, look out for Instagram stories. Just might see some interaction for next week's episode.
That's right. Whatever you guys do, make sure you get out of your comfort zone. Pray about it. Even if you say that you're going to pray about it, make sure that you pray about it in all that you do moving forward. Next week, I think we're going to talk about some music. I've kind of held on to it. I wanted music to be part of this show in an episode or in a segment too. We just hadn't quite found the time yet, but we're going to get this thing figured out, man.
Yes, sir.
So, Noah.
Hey, great hanging out with you again tonight, man.
It's awesome being here. We're going to do it again next week, so make sure you guys tune in when that time comes. But in the meantime, keep growing upstairs.